Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air, your chest tight, your head pounding. For a brief moment, you're convinced it's just a bad dream until the reality sets in. Your body is starving for oxygen. Your brain, the very core of who you are, is under siege. For millions of seniors, this is not a nightmare. It's the silent nightly battle of sleep apnea. And the most terrifying truth, many never realize it until a stroke strikes without warning. As a neurologist, I've seen countless patients who ignored the warning signs, loud, snoring pauses in breathing, or waking up exhausted no matter how long they slept. One of my patients, Mrs. Park, a 72-year-old retired teacher, brushed off her constant fatigue as just aging. But one morning she collapsed in her kitchen. The diagnosis, a major stroke triggered by years of untreated sleep apnea. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoyed this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Today, I'm going to walk you through the hidden ways sleep apnea silently destroys your brain and body, and why ignoring it is one of the most dangerous mistakes seniors can make. Sleep apnea is often thought of as nothing more than snoring or restless sleep. But for seniors, it is far more dangerous. Each pause in breathing during the night is like a hammer striking your arteries. Every time airflow is blocked, oxygen levels drop and blood pressure surges. Stress hormones like adrenaline flood the bloodstream, tightening vessels and raising heart rate. Over time, this repeated punishment hardens and inflames the arteries that carry blood to your brain. What should be flexible and smooth becomes stiff and scarred, and once that happens, the chances of a life-threatening stroke rise dramatically. One of the most troubling realities of aging is that arteries naturally lose some elasticity. In your younger years, vessels expand and contract easily, buffering your organs against pressure changes. But as the decades pass, the walls thicken, the lining becomes less resilient, and circulation slows. Now imagine adding sleep apnea to the equation. Instead of giving your arteries the chance to rest and recover at night, each pause in breathing delivers a blow. Instead of repairing themselves, your vessels are forced to endure hundreds of oxygen dips and pressure spikes while you sleep. What should have been healing hours become hours of hidden destruction. I remember a patient named Mr. Han, 68, a retired engineer who prided himself on being logical and skeptical of medical exaggerations. For years, his wife complained about his loud snoring and the frightening pauses in his breathing. He always brushed it off, saying, "It's just what happens when men get older." Then one morning while pouring tea, he suddenly dropped the cup. His right arm was weak, his speech slurred. He was rushed to the hospital where we discovered he had suffered a minor stroke. When we looked deeper, the truth was clear. His carotid arteries, the major highways delivering blood to his brain, were thickened and stiff, worn down by years of untreated sleep apnea. The condition had aged his vessels far beyond his chronological years. His stroke was not an accident. It was the predictable outcome of his body enduring oxygen starvation and blood pressure shocks night after night. The medical evidence is undeniable. Studies show that people with untreated sleep apnea have a much higher risk of developing arteriosclerosis, the stiffening of blood vessels. Seniors in particular are vulnerable because their arteries are already under strain from age-related changes. Think of arteries like garden hoses when they're young. They bend easily, allowing water to flow smoothly. With age, the hose stiffens. Now imagine stomping on that hose hundreds of times each night. The walls weaken, cracks form, and pressure builds. Sleep apnea is that stomping force, and your brain pays the price. Mr. Han eventually regained some function after months of therapy, but he told me something that has stayed with me. If I had taken my wife's worries seriously, I might have avoided this. His regret is a powerful reminder that ignoring symptoms can have permanent consequences. Snoring, morning headaches, waking up tired even after a full night in bed, these are not harmless quirks. They are red flags that your arteries may already be suffering. I share his story because it is not rare. Many seniors walk into my office only after their first stroke, unaware that their arteries have been silently damaged for years by sleep apnea. It is not the sudden crisis that does the most harm. It is the slow, invisible erosion that takes place every night. And once arteries are hardened, the risk does not just stop at stroke. Heart attacks, memory decline, kidney damage all become more likely when circulation is compromised. So if you or someone you love snores heavily, gasps for air at night, or feels constantly drained during the day, Please do not dismiss it as just aging. Your arteries may already be under attack, and if hardened arteries sound alarming, the next danger is even more terrifying: the oxygen deprivation itself slowly starving your brain cells while you sleep. If hardened arteries sound frightening, what comes next is even more chilling: the slow suffocation of your brain. Sleep apnea is essentially an oxygen deprivation trap. Every pause in breathing robs the brain of oxygen it desperately needs. Seniors already vulnerable to reduced blood flow from age are the ones who pay the highest price. Here's what happens when breathing stops: oxygen levels in the blood plummet within seconds. The body sounds the alarm by releasing stress hormones, forcing you to gasp awake just enough to resume breathing. But these micro-awakenings often go unnoticed. You might not even remember them in the morning, yet your brain does. Instead of deep restorative rest, your neurons are starved, your memory suffers, and your risk of cognitive decline multiplies. I'll never forget Mrs. Yoon, a 74-year-old grandmother who loved gardening and reading to her grandchildren. She came to me complaining of worsening forgetfulness. She could no longer remember the recipes she had cooked for decades, and sometimes she would lose her way walking to the local market. Her family feared the early onset of dementia. What we discovered was startling: years of untreated sleep apnea. Every night her oxygen levels dipped dangerously low, robbing her brain of the fuel it needed. Her dementia symptoms were actually the brain's cry for oxygen. This connection is more common than you might realize. Research shows that even mild drops in nighttime oxygen can shrink the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. For seniors, where brain reserve is already thinning, these repeated episodes become devastating. It's like slowly suffocating the brain cell by cell. And the consequences extend beyond memory. Oxygen deprivation at night raises the risk of small vessel strokes, tiny but cumulative injuries to the brain's wiring. Over months and years, they accumulate like hidden landmines, leading to confusion, imbalance, and mood changes. Seniors often chalk these changes up to normal aging, when in fact their brains are being starved each night. Mrs. Yoon's case was a wake-up call for her family. Once she began treatment with a CPAP machine, her memory stabilized. She regained confidence in her daily life. It didn't erase all the damage, but it prevented the spiral into severe dementia. Her story is a reminder: oxygen is not optional. It is the very currency of life, and without it, the brain cannot survive. So the next time someone tells you that snoring is just annoying, remember Mrs. Yoon. Her forgotten recipes were not just memory lapses, they were symptoms of a brain suffocating in the dark. But oxygen deprivation is not the only hidden danger of sleep apnea. There's another equally destructive force at work: sudden nighttime blood pressure surges that silently strain your heart and brain until disaster strikes. If oxygen deprivation weakens the brain, then the next hidden consequence of sleep apnea is like a ticking time bomb: nighttime blood pressure surges. During the day, blood pressure rises and falls naturally with activity. But at night, the body is designed to rest. Blood pressure should gently decline, giving the heart and arteries a much-needed break. In seniors with sleep apnea, this doesn't happen. Instead, every pause in breathing triggers a violent surge in blood pressure, hammering the cardiovascular system while you sleep. This phenomenon is known as nocturnal hypertension, and it is one of the most dangerous complications of untreated sleep apnea. Instead of calm, restorative nights, your body experiences repeated stress tests. Each time airflow stops, oxygen plummets, the brain panics, and adrenaline floods the bloodstream. Blood vessels constrict, pressure spikes, and the heart pounds against resistance. For seniors whose arteries are already stiffened with age, this is the perfect recipe for stroke. I think of Mr. Choi, a 70-year-old retired shop owner. He had always considered himself healthy. He didn't smoke, avoided heavy drinking, and walked daily. Yet he constantly woke with headaches and dizziness. His blood pressure readings at the doctor's office were puzzling normal during the day, but his wife often found him drenched in sweat at night. One night he collapsed while getting up to use the bathroom. Tests revealed severe nocturnal hypertension caused by sleep apnea. His heart had been straining for years in silence, and his brain finally gave way under the pressure. What makes these nighttime surges so insidious is that they go undetected. Many seniors monitor their blood pressure in the morning or at the clinic only to be told everything looks fine. But what the numbers don't show is the war happening at 2 a.m. when blood pressure spikes as high as 200-120 during apnea episodes. Over time, these repeated assaults weaken blood vessel walls, making them prone to rupture. This is why strokes in seniors with sleep apnea often occur suddenly and without warning. Science confirms this hidden danger. Studies show that patients with untreated sleep apnea are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop resistant hypertension blood pressure that remains high despite medication. And in those over 60, the risk of hemorrhagic stroke caused by a burst blood vessel rises sharply. It's not the occasional high reading that kills, but the nightly bombardment that chips away at the body's resilience. Mr. Choi survived his collapse, but recovery was long and difficult. He later confessed that he had ignored years of his wife's concerns about his snoring and gasping. "I thought it was harmless noise," he admitted, "but it nearly killed me." His regret echoes what I tell every patient: snoring is not just sound, it is a signal of danger. If you've ever wondered why you wake up with pounding headaches or why medication alone isn't controlling your blood pressure, you may already be living with these nighttime surges, and ignoring them could mean the difference between years of independence and a sudden disabling stroke. But blood pressure isn't the only part of this deadly puzzle. There's another silent partner to sleep apnea that makes strokes even more likely: diabetes. When these two conditions collide, the results can be catastrophic. If nightly blood pressure surges weren't enough, sleep apnea adds another silent threat: its powerful connection to diabetes. On their own, both conditions are dangerous, but when combined, they become a deadly duo that dramatically increases the risk of stroke in seniors. Here's how it works. Each time you stop breathing during sleep, oxygen levels plummet and the body panics. Stress hormones like cortisol are released in bursts, pushing blood sugar higher. Over months and years, this repeated cycle causes insulin resistance, where your cells no longer respond properly to insulin. What follows is a vicious loop. High blood sugar damages blood vessels, and damaged blood vessels make it harder for the brain to receive oxygen-rich blood. For seniors, this double assault turns every night into a risk factor for stroke. Take the case of Mrs. Kim, a 66-year-old grandmother who had been managing type 2 diabetes for nearly a decade. She followed her doctor's advice, took her medication faithfully, and tried to maintain a healthy diet. Yet her blood sugar readings were unpredictable. Some mornings they were inexplicably high, even though she hadn't eaten late at night. Her fatigue grew worse, her vision blurred, and eventually she suffered a mild stroke. The true culprit wasn't just diabetes, it was untreated sleep apnea. Her nightly oxygen drops and stress surges were disrupting her glucose control, making her medications less effective and her vessels more vulnerable. This overlap is more common than you might imagine. Studies show that up to 80% of people with type 2 diabetes also suffer from sleep apnea, often undiagnosed. Seniors are particularly at risk because weight gain, declining muscle tone in the throat, and natural aging of the airways all contribute to blocked breathing at night. The tragedy is that many treat their diabetes aggressively while ignoring the apnea that fuels it. Imagine this cycle. You go to bed. Your airway collapses, oxygen plummets, stress hormones surge, your blood sugar rises. By morning, your glucose is high, your arteries are damaged, and your brain is weaker. Repeat this cycle every night for years, and it's not a question of if a stroke will occur, but when. I remember sitting with Mrs. Kim during her recovery. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought I was doing everything right. No one ever told me my snoring could be killing me." Her words are a painful reminder that health is never about one disease in isolation. The body works as a system, and when sleep apnea and diabetes collide, the damage multiplies. The good news is that once sleep apnea is treated, whether with CPAP therapy, weight management, or positional changes, blood sugar often improves. In fact, some patients see reductions in their A1C levels without changing their medication, simply because their body is no longer under nightly stress. Protecting your sleep is not just about rest, it's about controlling diabetes, protecting blood vessels, and preventing strokes. So if you are over 60, diabetic, and struggling with fatigue, morning headaches, or unpredictable glucose levels, ask yourself, could sleep apnea be the missing piece? Because if diabetes and apnea together raise the risk of stroke, what happens when they also trigger irregular heart rhythms? That's the next danger we must face: the deadly connection between sleep apnea, atrial fibrillation, and stroke. When diabetes and sleep apnea work together, they weaken blood vessels and set the stage for disaster. But there is yet another dangerous link that makes the situation even more urgent: the heart-brain connection. Untreated sleep apnea dramatically raises the risk of atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat that creates the perfect environment for blood clots. And once a clot forms, it only takes a moment for it to travel upward and trigger a devastating stroke. Here's the hidden mechanism. Each time your breathing stops, oxygen drops and your body jolts awake with a surge of stress hormones. This repeated cycle irritates the electrical system of the heart. Instead of beating steadily, the heart quivers chaotically in atrial fibrillation. When the upper chambers of the heart don't contract effectively, blood begins to pool and stagnant blood quickly turns into clots. For seniors whose circulation is already compromised by age, those clots are like loaded bullets waiting to fire. I recall Mr. Lee, a 73-year-old retired professor who came to my clinic after a frightening hospital stay. He had collapsed at home with sudden weakness on one side and slurred speech. Doctors diagnosed him with a clot-related stroke caused by atrial fibrillation. What shocked him most was learning that the irregular heartbeat had been fueled by years of undiagnosed sleep apnea. His snoring and nightly awakenings were not harmless. They were slowly destabilizing his heart's rhythm until catastrophe struck. Mainstream cardiology recognizes that atrial fibrillation is one of the most common causes of stroke in seniors. What is less often discussed is how strongly apnea contributes to its development. Studies show that people with untreated sleep apnea are 2 to 4 times more likely to develop atrial fibrillation. Worse yet, standard treatments like medication or electrical cardioversion often fail if apnea is not addressed. The heart cannot maintain stability while the body is being shocked by nightly oxygen crashes. The danger is not just the irregular heartbeat itself, but its unpredictability. A clot may form silently and travel to the brain without any warning. This is why so many strokes in seniors appear sudden and inexplicable. Behind the scenes, sleep apnea has been fueling atrial fibrillation, silently preparing the ground for tragedy. When I visited Mr. Lee during his rehabilitation, he told me, "I always thought my heart was strong because I exercised and ate well. I never imagined my sleep could betray me like this." His words highlight a truth many seniors overlook: good habits during the day cannot fully protect you if your body is under nightly assault. The good news is that treating sleep apnea often reduces atrial fibrillation episodes and lowers the risk of stroke. By restoring steady oxygen flow and reducing nightly surges in blood pressure, the heart is given a chance to recover its rhythm. In some patients, correcting apnea even prevents the need for invasive procedures. So, if you've ever felt your heart flutter at night, woken with palpitations, or been told you have an irregular rhythm, don't dismiss it as harmless. It may be the echo of your body fighting for air. And if apnea can destabilize the heart so profoundly, imagine what it does to your energy and alertness during the day. The next danger is one seniors face every morning: fatigue that leads to accidents, falls, and hidden risks you may not expect. If nighttime oxygen deprivation and heart rhythm disturbances weren't enough, sleep apnea sets a trap that extends into the day: unrelenting fatigue. Seniors often assume tiredness is a normal part of aging, but when sleep is repeatedly interrupted by apnea, the body never enters the deep restorative stages it needs. You may spend 8 hours in bed, yet wake up feeling as if you never slept at all. This exhaustion does not simply make you groggy. It can lead to dangerous accidents, cognitive decline, and even premature death. Let me tell you about Mrs. Cho, a 69-year-old widow who prided herself on living independently. She gardened daily and enjoyed visits from her grandchildren. But one afternoon, while driving to the market, she suddenly dozed off at a red light. Thankfully, no one was injured, but she was shaken. Tests later confirmed severe sleep apnea. Her body had been robbed of quality rest for years, and her daytime alertness had reached a critical low. For Mrs. Cho, ignoring her fatigue nearly cost her and others their lives. Medical science is clear: seniors with untreated sleep apnea are at far greater risk of car accidents, falls, and workplace injuries. In fact, studies show they are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer accidents compared to peers without apnea. The reason is simple: fragmented sleep prevents the brain from consolidating memory, sharpening reflexes, and maintaining balance. For older adults, even a single fall can mean broken hips, lengthy hospital stays, and permanent loss of independence. But fatigue doesn't just affect safety. It erodes quality of life in more subtle ways. Seniors often describe feeling irritable, unable to concentrate, or foggy. Hobbies once enjoyed become chores. Conversations are harder to follow, and social withdrawal sets in. I've had patients who stopped attending church or family gatherings because they were too drained to participate. Over time, this isolation deepens the risk of depression and cognitive decline. There's also a cruel irony here. Many seniors assume their fatigue is simply because of age, so they push through with coffee or short naps. Yet caffeine only masks the problem, and daytime naps can worsen nighttime sleep cycles. The true enemy is untreated apnea, silently robbing them of the deep sleep stages, where growth hormone repairs tissue, where the brain clears toxins, and where memories are stored. Without those stages, both body and mind begin to deteriorate. I think again of Mrs. Cho. After beginning CPAP therapy, she told me, "It feels like I've woken up from a 10-year fog. Her story reminds us that fatigue is not just a nuisance, it is a signal. Ignoring it means risking accidents, losing independence, and accelerating the aging of both body and brain. So if you find yourself nodding off in the daytime, struggling to focus, or feeling drained no matter how long you sleep, don't dismiss it as just getting older. It could be your body begging you to take apnea seriously. And if daytime fatigue seems bad enough, consider what happens inside the brain itself at night when oxygen deprivation doesn't just cause tiredness, but actually steals memories and accelerates dementia. If daytime fatigue makes life harder, the hidden damage sleep apnea does to memory is even more devastating. Seniors often fear losing their independence to dementia, and yet many don't realize that nightly oxygen deprivation is one of the fastest ways to accelerate memory decline. Each time breathing stops, oxygen levels drop and the brain is robbed of its most vital fuel. Neurons, the cells that store and retrieve your memories, are highly sensitive to oxygen shortage. Without steady supply, they wither and die, sometimes permanently. I remember Mrs. Kang, a 72-year-old retired librarian. For decades, she had been sharp, organized, and known for her ability to recall even the smallest details. But over the course of a few years, she began to forget things she had never struggled with before. She misplaced books, forgot the names of longtime friends, and even left her stove on one afternoon. Her children worried about Alzheimer's disease. Yet when we investigated further, we found a different culprit: severe sleep apnea. Night after night, her brain cells were starving. What looked like dementia was actually a consequence of years of oxygen deprivation. Mainstream medicine recognizes that sleep plays a critical role in memory consolidation. Deep sleep is when the brain replays and stores the day's experiences, transferring them into long-term memory. But in seniors with apnea, deep sleep is constantly interrupted by gasps for air. The brain never has the chance to complete this process. Research shows that repeated drops in oxygen can shrink the hippocampus, the memory center of the brain. For an older adult whose brain is already shrinking naturally with age, this accelerated loss can be catastrophic. The consequences are not only about memory lapses, small vessel strokes, tiny, often undetected injuries caused by oxygen deprivation accumulate over time. They weaken connections between different parts of the brain, leading to confusion, imbalance, mood swings, and personality changes. Families often misinterpret these signs as inevitable aging when in fact they are preventable injuries caused by a treatable sleep disorder. Mrs. Kang's life changed once her apnea was addressed. With treatment, her memory improved enough that she could once again read stories to her grandchildren without losing her place. While not every lost neuron can be restored, protecting the brain from further damage gave her back a sense of dignity and control. The lesson is clear. Sleep apnea is not just about snoring or tiredness. It is a thief that steals your memories in the night. And once those memories are gone, they rarely return. For seniors, protecting sleep means protecting identity, independence, and cherished moments with family. So if you've noticed more forgetfulness, misplaced items, or moments of disorientation, don't rush to assume it's just aging. It may be your brain crying out for oxygen, and if memory loss is frightening, the next danger is just as alarming: the subtle signs your body gives every morning that most seniors dismiss until it's too late. By now, you've seen how sleep apnea hardens arteries, robs the brain of oxygen, fuels diabetes, disrupts heart rhythms, and even steals your memories. But here is perhaps the most tragic part. The body gives warning signs long before catastrophe strikes. Sadly, many seniors ignore them or brush them off as normal aging, allowing apnea to progress silently until a stroke or cognitive decline changes life forever. What are these ignored warnings? Morning headaches, for one. When you wake up with a dull, throbbing pain in your temples, it's often a signal that carbon dioxide built up overnight because you weren't breathing properly. Seniors often dismiss these headaches as dehydration or tension, never realizing that they are red flags from the brain. Another overlooked sign is waking with a dry mouth or sore throat. These point to repeated mouth breathing during the night, often caused by airway blockage. Constant trips to the bathroom are another subtle clue. While many assume this is just part of aging, apnea-related stress hormones can force the kidneys into overdrive, waking you up multiple times. Then there's the restless sleep itself, the tossing, turning, or sudden jerks of the body. Partners often describe loud snoring, interrupted by long pauses followed by choking or gasping sounds. These are not harmless quirks. They are moments when the body is fighting for air. Left unchecked, they set the stage for devastating cardiovascular events. I think of Mr. Park, a 75-year-old retired farmer. His daughter brought him to my clinic after he fainted during a family gathering. For years, he had brushed off his morning headaches and constant tiredness. I'm old, "This is normal," he told her. But tests showed he had severe sleep apnea and dangerously high nighttime blood pressure. Just weeks later, he suffered a stroke that left his right arm paralyzed. His family's greatest sorrow was realizing the signs had been there all along, if only he had paid attention. As a neurologist, I always emphasize that the body whispers before it screams. A dry mouth, headaches, restless nights, constant fatigue. These are whispers urging you to act before the scream of a stroke or heart attack arrives. The tragedy is not that sleep apnea is dangerous. The tragedy is that it is treatable and yet so often ignored. Seniors accept these symptoms as part of aging when in reality they are warnings of a preventable condition. So if you or someone you love is living with these signs, don't wait for disaster to strike. Talk to your doctor, demand a sleep study, protect your brain before it is too late. Because as frightening as these symptoms may be, there is hope. In fact, there are safe and effective ways to restore restful sleep, protect the brain, and reclaim vitality. And that is where we will end, with solutions and hope for better nights and healthier tomorrows. We have traveled through the silent dangers of sleep apnea, arterial stiffness, oxygen deprivation, surges in blood pressure, diabetes complications, heart rhythm disorders, fatigue, memory loss, and overlooked warnings. Each of these is terrifying on its own. Together, they form a web of risks that dramatically raise your chances of suffering a life-changing stroke. But here is the truth. I want you to take away, it does not have to end in tragedy. With knowledge and action, you can protect yourself. The first step is understanding that aging changes how your body responds to sleep. Seniors naturally experience lighter sleep and less time in restorative stages. This makes the brain and heart more vulnerable to interruptions. Ignoring snoring, fatigue, or headaches means allowing damage to accumulate in silence. Recognizing these signals is the beginning of prevention. The second step is knowing that effective treatments exist. CPAP therapy remains the gold standard, providing a steady stream of air that keeps the airway open. For some, oral devices or positional therapy are alternatives. Weight management, avoiding alcohol before bedtime, and maintaining nasal health also reduce apnea severity. These interventions are not just about better sleep, they are about protecting arteries, stabilizing blood sugar, preventing irregular heart rhythms, and shielding the brain from oxygen starvation. And let's not forget food. What you eat during the day influences how well your body handles stress at night. Seniors can choose brain-safe foods that support oxygen delivery and vessel health. Here are 6 that I recommend often to my patients. Berries rich in antioxidants that reduce vascular inflammation and protect neurons. Avocados packed with healthy fats that support brain circulation. Leafy greens, nitrate-rich, helping to relax stiff arteries. Walnuts, a source of omega-3s improving both heart rhythm and brain function. Eggs high in choline, essential for memory and neural communication. Fatty fish, salmon, or sardines provide DHA, a vital nutrient for brain health. In addition to choosing the right foods, follow these safe sleep rules. Eat earlier in the evening. Late, heavy meals worsen apnea. Pair carbohydrates with protein or fat. This stabilizes blood sugar overnight. Avoid alcohol before bed. It relaxes airway muscles and worsens apnea. Never ignore daytime fatigue. If you're falling asleep easily during the day, see a doctor. Always listen to your partner's observations. Snoring and gasping are not harmless. I want to leave you with the story of Mrs. Kim, a 70-year-old who finally sought treatment after her daughter insisted. Within weeks of using CPAP, her headaches disappeared, her energy returned, and her memory improved. She told me, "I thought my life was winding down. Now I feel like I've been given extra years." That is the power of awareness and action. So my final message is this: do not ignore the whispers of your body. Sleep apnea is not a harmless annoyance. It is a major health threat, but it is also a preventable one. By taking steps today, seeking help, making changes, and protecting your sleep, you can safeguard your brain, your independence, and your future. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more seniors can protect themselves and live longer, healthier lives.